Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Hawkzone Rundown. I'm flying kind of solo tonight. Ryan won't be joining, but it's Mock Draft Monday, so that's something that we've been doing for a couple of weeks now. And tonight I get the privilege of having Dan Viens come over from Seahawks Forever. We're going to collab on a couple mocks. We're going to talk a little bit about the Albert Breer story that came out today about Geno and why he left Seattle, as well as we'll touch on fullbacks, because we heard from John Schneider last week on his show that fullbacks are going to be a part of the Seattle Seahawks offense going forward, which is kind of an exciting thing. So with that being said, make sure you guys subscribe below, click that notification button so you guys never miss an episode going forward. As well, guys, there's going to be a live viewer Q&A after the two mock drafts, so make sure you guys are getting your questions in throughout. Please, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee. Links for that will be posted below, as well as super chats and super thanks as well are always appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into it.
So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to.
Don't you ever talk about me!
Yeah, let's go. It's go time, baby.
Geno steps up, takes that shot to the end zone. It is Metcalf.
I'm just about that action, Moss.
You about to go get it. You just like to do it.
That's what it is.
Off me.
Nobody in the world can do it.
Are you kidding me? Trying to do that. Pass is caught back in. Jackson Smith is Jigba. The surge music rolls in. Throw it with Baldwin. Oh my goodness, he caught it. By Leonard Williams.
This is the Hawkzone Rundown with your hosts, Ryan and Bryce.
Well, welcome back, Dan. It's like we do this every other week. You and me are somehow on some show together, talking Seahawks, talking NFL draft.
We just do what the people want, right? Every time we do this together, we hear good things, so we just keep doing it. It's not because we like each other. We just
No, not at all. There's no
do it for the
friendship at
fans.
all here. It's completely just because of coincidence of us, giving the people what they want. But
doing it for the fans.
how you been, Dan? I know you've been busy as of late. Your channel's constantly going now with content. I'm trying to keep up with it all the time with the notifications. So, how things been?
Good. It's I'm glad you mentioned that it's Mock Draft Monday, because in my new life, I have absolutely zero concept on a daily basis of what day it actually is, and it really, really throws me off. So, I mean, today I woke up and thought I had a couple appointments I had to hustle and get ready for, a Zoom call and and nope, that's tomorrow. So, glad to be spending Mock Draft Monday with you.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited you were able to come on here, Dan, and we can get into a couple of these different scenarios. So just so everyone knows, our mock drafts tonight, the first one we're going to do, me and Dan are going to stick and pick with every Seahawks pick. So we're not going to do any trades or anything like that. And then the second one, me and Dan are going to be wheeling and dealing, trying to get ourselves players that we're looking for that we think are realistic options for the Seahawks and not just necessarily what is presented to us on the board. So it'll be a good show. And I think it'll be great, Dan, because you've done those positional breakdowns last week with guys you think that are great fits. And we just started doing our segment, today. Me and Ryan recorded a couple. So I think it's going to work out perfectly for that. But
Nice.
With that being said, let's talk on something that got dropped today. And I know some people will want to talk about it, some won't. But Albert Breer Geno story that he dropped today was kind of interesting to me, because it kind of gives you a little bit more behind the scene look of what actually occurred between Geno, between the Seahawks, and that this really goes back to even like when Pete Carroll got fired, that it started to erode a little bit of that relationship, because Geno was quite upset when Pete got let go. Obviously, they had the contract negotiations that kind of started at that Tennessee road training camp session, and we heard things didn't really get going anywhere, and it kind of made things that seemed a little bit more difficult this time around to get Geno to the table for an extension.
Yeah, anytime one of these stories comes out, and Albert is, he's taken the torch passed by Peter King, and he's doing it as well as anyone out there. And you can always count on him to get sort of these behind the scenes, peel the curtain back, insider stories. And, but the reaction to these things always tends to be, in my opinion, a little bit excessive. You're already seeing that Brock Heward today, tweeted that he was disrespected and kind of pushed back on that, they paid him a bunch of money. What's Geno thinking? I didn't take any of that away from this article. I just took it away as two things really stand out. The first thing is this, I think this was all sort of set in stone last year in a way, or set in motion anyway. And we all recall, it didn't seem like much at the time, although I remember we all talked about it at the time. But last year when Geno had made it known, or it was leaked that Geno wanted to approach the team about a new contract, and then when John was asked about it, he said no. He said he's got 2 years left on his deal. He's got a contract. He basically just shot it down. And at the time, I just kind of brushed it off. Like, that's just kind of how they operate. And they don't do it 2 years in advance, but now that's what this article makes clear. And it's not that it was really a money thing. I mean, it was, but it sounds like that could have been worked out. I mean, Breer even pointed out there was a solid contract offer presented by the Seahawks. Like, they wanted him to be here. And you can say that it was a low ball offer all you want, but we're still talking about some legitimate money. We're still talking about $35 million a year. That's not nothing, and it's more than he got last time. And then the fact that Geno may have felt disrespected because the contract included outs. Well, what do you expect when you're a 35-year-old quarterback with an uneven history? As much as I'm a fan of Geno, I'm a fan of his game, I thought he was going to be here, I wanted him to be here. To me, it makes complete business sense to want to protect yourself with an older quarterback. And I think sometimes we want to make drama where there's no drama. I think both sides got what they wanted. And there was more of a market. The other little nugget out of this piece too that I came away with is Breer acknowledging there were 2 other teams interested. And so, we can talk about maybe who we think those teams are or whatever, but there was a market there, which I think, for those who said, all we could get is a 3rd-round pick for Geno. Well, if there was competition for his services, then that's probably the best compensation they were going to get, right? So I think both sides ended up happy. It did say that the key point for me was that the timeline, in fact, here, I want to make sure that I word it right. Oh, no, I can't find the line. But that the Geno's age didn't fit the timeline of the roster. And that, Schneider wanted to not necessarily go all in this year and try to win, but that, with a young head coach he really believes in, that they felt like, let's create a window of opportunity with this really young roster moving forward so that we can build a long window of contention. So they go younger at quarterback. That made sense to them. I didn't really see any disrespect here at all. I think it was just business as usual in the NFL.
So I found that exact quote you're talking about. That's one thing that stood out to me. So it goes, it's talking about the conversation that Geno and they had with John Schneider, and he goes, it wasn't a bad talk. There was nothing sinister yet.
Yeah,
Smith's big takeaway was that Seattle wanted to lean into the young core it had built, partly with the capital that came from the Russell Wilson trade of 2022, a trade that ironically enough cleared the way for the former Giant Charger to finally become the starter again, or a starting quarterback again.
Yeah.
The thing for me that was interesting too in this is how much Pete Carroll was a factor for Geno. That, I knew Pete and Geno were close. I didn't understand the date. Like, I didn't realize it was daily communication almost. Like, they would talk regularly. And, when you talk about the disrespect that Geno felt, whether that's the contract, whether that's the outs in it or whatnot, it kind of alludes in there that he may not have necessarily jived. Like we talked about when they traded DK and Tyler got released and Geno moved on, and that whole group, Geno made the comment on the Marshawn and Mike Robb show that they felt like outsiders. Well, the way this is kind of laid out, Geno might have even slightly felt that way to a point as well. And, once again, and I agree with Brady Henderson's tweet he put out today, if Pete Carroll doesn't enter the NFL, Geno Smith is still probably the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. That to me is still the biggest domino that fell that caused this whole thing to I think, become a thing. Was Pete coming back, Pete going to the Raiders. When you did mention, though, the 2 teams, I can think of 2 that come to my mind. One being the New Orleans Saints, potentially, because they may have wanted to move off Derek Carr and his money and potentially go to a shorter project with a more proven guy, potentially, in their mind. But the one for me is Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that was the obvious one that stuck out.
That was the obvious one for me that stuck out. And, all in all, I agree with you, Dan. I think everybody got what they wanted in this. Seattle gets to pivot to a younger quarterback that fits their timeline of their young core. And Geno gets to go with the one coach that I think for him, he feels understands him the best, and he can go and have the best remaining time of his career with the one coach he truly believes in and he thinks believes in him as well.
And good for him, because honestly, I could make a case that it's a questionable move on the part of the Raiders. I mean, you have a team that's been one of the worst teams in the league for quite some time. They've churned through coaches nonstop. They can't get that right. They've churned through quarterbacks. They can't get that right. Roster is severely flawed. They have so much heavy lifting to do. And you're going to put, your quarterback eggs into a mid-30s quarterback's basket and pay him some significant money. That's either overconfidence in what you're doing and how quickly you can build it, or it's just a statement of what was available out there. And this was the best move. And there was obviously the familiarity with Pete. Like, this could go so many different ways for the Seahawks and the Raiders. It could work wonderfully for the Raiders, because I do believe that Geno has more in him than we even saw here in Seattle, if you build up the offense properly. And I think Chip Kelly was a really inspired hire down there. But it could go poorly too. And if things don't go well in the next 2 years, now you have a 36, 37-year-old quarterback and you're starting over again. So it's going to be, I think, one of the most interesting dual storylines to watch over the next 3-4 years, which ironically, we all said when the Russell Wilson trade was made, which team's going to come out on the better end of that. And I don't think any of us saw it ending up for the Broncos where it is now as quickly as it has. And then here the Seahawks are again looking for another quarterback, or they were looking for another quarterback. So yeah, that I took all the same things away. The other one was it just further solidified for me that the moment they realized Sam Darnold was going to be available on the open market, that Darnold was a guy they immediately had interest in, immediately. And that precipitated Geno's agent not getting back to him with a counteroffer. They didn't just go, what do we do now? Pivot to Darnold. The wheels had been in motion, and that's a guy that they had been considering for quite some time. He wasn't their first choice, but I think he was 1A, and that's why they were so willing to pivot off of Geno as quickly as they did. It kind of just made that decision easier for them.
No, it completely did. And I honestly believe the Raiders needed the stability. They need that in that organization. They have literally, since they traded Derek Carr, have not had stability at the quarterback position. And it helps Pete really drive home his culture. Like, you've got Max Crosby there on the defensive side that we have clearly seen. He's re-signed. He got an extension. He's bought into Pete, but Pete needed a guy on the other side of the ball. And when you read this article, it even says how Smith has been in constant communication with Max Crosby about, how do we build this culture? How are you going to get your guys on defense to buy in? How am I going to get the guys on offense to buy in? And you know what? I think there's a point too to what you said, Dan, that we may see a better version of Geno than we've seen in Seattle. That maybe, with Tom Brady there and the pieces they might be able to put around him with the high draft capital, that maybe we see, 2 more years of Geno being a top 10 NFL quarterback statistically, and maybe a higher ceiling that we saw here. And in Seattle's case, yeah, Seattle took a risk here. John's taken a very risky pivot from something of stability to a more rockier path, potentially with Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold will give stability, and I think he has a high ceiling. I think we're going to see better football from Sam Darnold. But overall, like, at the end of this, reading this article, the biggest thing I took away is what we both started with, which is both parties, I think, are going to be happy in the end of how this kind of shook out, unless it completely deteriorates on one end or the other, which I don't foresee happening, but I think everyone got what they wanted out of this.
Yeah. And it's different. General managers have different ideas about how to run their organization, how to run their roster, because, John clearly wanted to get a quarterback who matched the timeline more that his roster has as a whole. And yet Geno goes to a team that's really young too. So it's just two different viewpoints, and there's 32 different viewpoints in the league, and some work better than others, obviously, as we see. And if it doesn't work well enough, you get fired. But, John's been able to hang in there for 16 years. And part of that was Pete. And, as we've talked so many times this offseason, I think we're going to find out more about John Schneider this offseason. And maybe we have to some extent, but also in how this draft process plays out too.
So with that being said, there's another story that kind of came out last week, I should say, that got me a little excited, because as an offensive coordinator, I do love this position. I like to have it in my offense. The Seahawks are looking for a fullback, and John Schneider made it known on his show that this is something new to them, because they really haven't had one. Mike Robb was the last fullback that they had. But when I think of fullbacks, I think of, in Seahawks history, I think of Williams. I think of Max Strong. Those are the guys that really come to the forefront for me. And, Leonard Weaver had his small little stay here, and he was kind of a fun, guy. And then we had smash his face open Schmidt for a little
Owen
bit.
Schmidt.
Owen Schmidt,
Yeah,
when he did that, which I think was like his one or two starts in the NFL, was the first one was running out of the tunnel and splitting his forehead open with his helmet, which, you love to see from your fullback. But
yeah,
when you heard that, Dan, that they were really like fullback's going to be a part of this more, and like it's come to the forefront again, who are some names that came to mind for you that Seattle may look at, whether it's free agency or even in the draft?
The first one was excitement. Like fullback brings back a lot of memories. I go back obviously farther than you, and guys like David Hughes, who was a second-round pick, and David Sims in the early years, and even Dan Dornick played some tailback, but played fullback too, in kind of a dual role, which, just gave me an idea. We'll talk about that in a second. But and then my second thought was, where are we going to find one? He said we're working on that free agency. Well, there aren't any left, really. Like Kyle Juszczyk, they didn't have any interest in. Adam Prentice, who played for Kubiak in New Orleans last year, re-signed with the Saints. Patrick Richard went back to the Ravens. Like, there just aren't any, really, unless they're looking at guys as potential conversions. They're just projecting someone that's out there, maybe a bigger running back. And then he said they're looking to the draft, too. There aren't that many teams anymore that use fullbacks in college football. There's really one that I know of off the top of my head, because Stanford doesn't even anymore. When David Shaw was there, at least he carried that on after he took over for Jim Harbaugh. But there's Max Bredesen in Michigan, who, man, I wish he was in this draft this year. I'd be mocking him in every single draft. Unfortunately, sadly for us, he decided to go back for his last year at Michigan, but he's like that prototype, and you just don't see those guys in college. And so guys like you and me have to try to sort of piece it together in the aggregate and project and find guys that have fullback qualities that might fit into that offense. And that makes it fun, but it makes it hard to do too, because, I don't know that, Adam Prentice wasn't a traditional fullback. He's 225 pounds. I think Taysom Hill probably played that position when he was healthy last year for Kubiak more than Prentice did. So it'll be one of the fun little projects over the next month, is finding that guy.
So yeah, exactly. And that's going to be the thing. Because like you said, Adam Prentice really was the one that kind of stuck out to everyone, because of the connection with Kubiak. There's one name that is a free agent that I think potentially could be. He's older though. He's 30. So if you're going to bring in a veteran for 1 year, and that's Jacob Johnson. So he's 6'3", 255. He's played in a system similar. He was with the Giants last year. So, but he played, and here's the key thing I think we have to understand with this fullback: they have to be able to contribute on special teams.
Yeah.
And that's the one big part of this. And so he played 25% of the offensive snaps for the Giants, but he played 60% of his snaps on special teams. And so that's a guy that I look at, with potential, maybe that's who they go after. In the draft for me, Jared Casey out of Kansas is an interesting guy. He's 6 foot, 245. He's a tight end fullback hybrid, but he excelled in the Kansas run heavy scheme. He had 26 catches for, 296 yards last year, 6 touchdowns. He would, I think, be more of someone you'd look at. He's probably going to be a UDFA or maybe a round 7 kind of guy, but he to me seems like a realistic target because he can catch it out of the backfield. He is comfortable in the tight end, kind of more that H-back role that we talked about when you just mentioned Kyle Juszczyk. So he's someone too. And then there's Brock Lampe out of North Illinois, who's a more traditional fullback. Again, he's 6'2", 245. But really, that's what I think you're going to do. Harold Fanning Jr., I think, is an interesting potential one.
Right.
But yeah, there's not a lot out there because it's not a coveted position anymore, unless you're in one of these offenses for a Kubiak or a Kyle Shanahan or even Minnesota, because they have CJ Ham there in Minnesota.
Right.
And he's been there for a minute. So it's definitely more accustomed to this offense, not a lot of anybody else.
I think you're onto something kind of looking at the tight end position, because some of those guys in college are not built, as the traditional prototype that we want in the NFL for a tight end. Some of them are a little shorter and stumpier and kind of look like a fullback. And if they have some of those tight end traits where they can play in line and they can block and they can also catch the ball on occasion, then that's kind of the profile. I got to see Fannin run some of those reps. They did try him at sort of a fullback H-back down in Mobile, and he looked pretty comfortable. He is a good blocker. Haven't given up on the idea of Brady Russell. He's kind of in that build. and they kind of did some of those things with him last year. He just couldn't stay healthy. I think we've all forgotten about Derek Young. He's still on the roster, still in his rookie contract, and Shane Waldron had started to use him some as a fullback late in his rookie year. And that was kind of cool. He's sort of built that way and certainly can help you in the passing game. My dream is Cam Scatterbo. I just don't know that, if you take a guy like that who has aspirations of proving he can be a lead back in the NFL and you try to make him a fullback, are you going to have a happy player? Like, that's something that, haven't seen really a lot reported. I don't think they met with him at the combine. I haven't seen him for a 30 visit yet. But just the way he plays and then the questions about his long speed, he would make a ton of sense. We've talked about JJ Pegues before out of Ole Miss, the defensive lineman. He's 315 pounds, but they used him as a wildcat quarterback. I think he had 9 touchdowns, even threw a couple of passes, caught a couple of balls. Like, he started his college career as a tight end, but he's actually a guy that can also contribute as a rotational interior defensive lineman. Like, he's 6'2", 315. He can penetrate. He's got some quicks. Like, he's a legitimate guy that can give you some value there too. So he's fun. And then I was just spent some time this morning just kind of looking sort of at the back end of this running back class, because it's such a good class. And just trying to find guys that just don't fit into this class from a size speed perspective. And one that I came up with is LaQuindon Jackson out of Arkansas. He's 6'1.5", 229 pounds. He's weighed as much as 235, 240, but at the combine he was 229. He was a dual threat quarterback in high school, went to Texas as a quarterback, transferred to Utah for a year or for 2 years, played quarterback there, and then converted to running back and went to Arkansas. And he had some success there. He was the first Razorback. This is a little interesting piece of trivia. The first Razorback running back to rush for touchdowns in 5 straight games since, rest in peace, former Seahawk Alex Collins. He's a guy that just doesn't have the quicks, but he's big, he's physical, he's caught some balls. That's kind of what I'm looking for is a running back that just doesn't have the speed to be able to stick there in the NFL, but has the size and the physicality to be able to project as a guy that can block in the running game too. So, there's other guys out there, and I suspect that kind of position is going to be a guy that we've probably never heard of.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I totally agree.
Guy too.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think of with this is you're going to see it be a UDFA or a 7th round flyer that's maybe a converted running back or a tight end. And, the other thing that they could very well do when we think of fullback, we are kind of, me personally, I'm kind of thinking more traditional. They could very well be what you said, Dan, which is a tight end. It could very well be,
more of an H-back.
Yeah, an H-back. And, I'm just trying to think of the name and it's escaping me right now. The tight end out of Georgia Tech that we've all loved his blocking.
Yeah,
Pause. There you go. He's a guy that you could move in where he's lined up, offset, slides across, and there's your fullback now, and you're into that kind of personnel. So it'll be very interesting to see how Seattle addresses this, because you can clearly tell from the way John Schneider talked about it, the way Clint Kubiak's talked about it, it is going to be an important piece to this offense and how it's going to operate, which is something we haven't seen for a while. So, I'm definitely excited to see it. I see an interesting one. Guys, everyone in here is kind of, throwing names out there.
You're looking at DJ Ugalele.
Yes, that is exactly who I'm looking at here from Zach, who goes,
he's big for a quarterback. I'll tell you
he is very big for a quarterback. So he's definitely an interesting candidate for sure. I
wouldn't want him on the team as a quarterback. I'll tell you that. No. I watched enough of that experience in his career.
Exactly. No. So I would definitely, not be looking forward to that. But with that being said, Dan, let's kind of get into this. Give ourselves some time to go through a couple of these mock drafts we're going to do. So the first one that we're going to do here, guys, we're going to use the Pro Football Network simulator, because me and Dan both have agreed it's basically the best simulator to use right now for doing trades and so on. So this is the first one we got up here. This one we are sticking and picking at all of Seattle's spots, and we'll go through it. We'll make our justifications as me and Dan will tag team being GM for the Seattle Seahawks right now. So
all right, there you go.
We'll enter this and we'll see how it goes. So off the board goes Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Jalen Walker, Shedeur Sanders, Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Genty, Mike Green, McMillan. Ooh, Denver traded up for McMillan. There we go. Shamar Stewart to the Cowboys. And damn, Michael Williams went. So again, we're not going to do any of the trades.
Man,
So
I got to tell you, we talked about which simulator to use before we went on the air, and each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. I like the PFF interface the best, but their big board just is all over the place, and I just don't think it's accurate. That's about as realistic of a 1 through 17 as we've seen yet, except with if you took Travis Hunter and flipped him around with Will Campbell there, because Hunter's going to the Browns. Then and then Carter probably goes to the Giants, but all the rest of it, like Sanders to the Jets, Johnson to the Panthers, Graham to the Saints, makes a lot of sense. Genty to the Bears.
The one for me was Jalen Walker. I could see that being Genty there for the Raiders potentially, just because of the running back, and I could see Walker being a fit for Chicago and them in that defense trying to figure out some of their pieces. But the interesting thing too here is the Broncos coming up to 12 to get McMillan.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys taking Stewart makes some sense with all the Micah Parsons talk down there. And
I think Stewart just spent like 2 days visiting the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Too. Spent some good time with them. So
Michael Williams, there you go, an edge. And we just heard, what was it? I think you might have posted it potentially, Dan, or something about they may trade and take an edge of the Bengals and then trade away Trey Hendrickson. So I saw someone
Tony Pauline was reporting that they that especially after what Hendrickson's comments recently, how unhappy he is, that if they get into this draft and get an edge or two that they like, and they think the draft went the way that they hoped it would, that they'd be open to trading Hendrickson during the draft, which means now we're talking about 2026 picks, in which case the Seahawks would be as well positioned as any team in the NFL with salary cap space and everything else to be able to make a move for him if they wanted to. So something to keep an eye on for sure.
All right, Dan. So we're on the clock here. What are you thinking? I know everyone in the chat is going to scream to take interior O-line.
Right.
And if we look at this, so we go to offense, we go to OGs, Booker's there, Gray Zabel's there, Donovan Jackson's there, Savania's there, Ratledge is there. Your boy Jackson Slater's still there. Offensive tackle, Josh Simmons, Connerly, Ezere, Embu. Like, the one for me that, I think trumps Gray Zabel potentially for Seattle is Embu. If he makes it, Armand Embu, if he makes it down there, which I don't think he will. Right. Calvin Banks is another one. He went to Miami, which I could see is very plausible now that Armstead has retired. And so that makes even more sense that happened there. I think receiver or edge is more in play for Seattle at pick 18 than I think most people realize.
Oh, I definitely think edge is in play. In fact, there was another Tony Pauline piece today where he says, talking to scouts and GMs and front office personnel around the league, he's pretty connected, that he thinks 8 edge players are going to go, and that once the run starts, and he even mentioned that he says some people around the league think the run could start right around Seattle. And I could see that. It's just good value, right? And you talk about the interior offensive line thing. Anyone who's watched my show knows that I typically don't go offensive line in the first round because of the depth and just what you're showing there, that you can get a guard that you need to plug and play as a starter, as a rookie, day one, on day two. And that player is not going to be very much lesser of a talent than what you're going to get at 18, if at all. Like, I can make an argument that Tate Ratledge might have a better NFL career than Gray Zabel. Yep. And so it's value. But if you do it the other way around and you take Zabel at 18 or Booker at 18, who I still don't believe is an ideal scheme fit, then the choices you have then on day two for edge, defensive tackle, tight end, receiver are so much better than what happens to the offensive line. And then it really drops off after day two. And so that's why I tend to go with a premium position in the first round lately, which is either a skill position or defensive line or edge.
So for me, if we were going to go edge, I'd want to go Ezeraku here. I think he offers something to our edge group that we don't have, which is extremely explosive first step and speed off the edge. He's a little bit undersized, but I think if you bring him in and do kind of what Seattle did with Bruce Irvin in 2012, where he's your pass rushing down guy, you bring him in on known pass rushing situations, and you have either Hall or Chenna or someone else opposite, and you kind of create a little bit of like a NASCAR package in a way with what they can do even on the interior, and you let him go to work. And then I think he could probably carry another 10 pounds, like go up to 260 and still be explosive, but allow him to then anchor more in 2026 as a more than rotational player and get him into the full lineup. So he'd be the edge I'd go. Now, there is one thing here, and I noticed a lot of people have seen it in the chat here. Malachi Starks from Georgia. The safety.
I have a real hard time taking a safety in the first round in this draft. I just don't like the positional value. First of all, we have two really good ones. They're both young, and I think Kobe Bryant's going to get extended and be locked up. And so, yeah, we know that Mike Macdonald likes to use 3 safeties sometimes. And I just don't like the value. I would rather trust McDonald to find a guy that he believes in that can fit, and there's a few of them on day 2 or even day 3 as a third safety, that I just think that the opportunity cost of what you're passing up by taking a safety there, Mike Macdonald took Geno Stone as a 7th rounder and made him into a Pro Bowl in 2 seasons in Cincinnati. And then he went and got paid on the free agent market by the Bengals. Like, I'd rather trust him to do that than use a premium pick on a safety in this draft. As much as I like Starks and I like Emenwari, I think there's better value later on. And I'd rather have a guy in another position. Ezra is a guy that I can get excited about. And when you say he's undersized, it's really only the height, and he makes up for it with
he's got a ridiculous bend,
35-inch arms or something ridiculous, and he knows how to use them. Like, I think he has the best. He's right there with Mike Green, I think, with the best set of pass rush moves and the best package.
Yes.
But he does, like you said, gives us something so different, and he's so good athletically that he would be able to do all the things Mike Macdonald likes to do with his edges, as far as dropping them into coverage and things like that and moving them around. The athleticism, the quickness is off the charts, as is the character. A+ character. He absolutely screams Seahawks in the way he conducts himself and the way he commits himself to football. I think that matters. We've seen how much it matters to the Seahawks and John Schneider, especially since 2017, the Malik McDowell draft. I think if I'm going edge there, if Shamar Stewart's off the board, then Ezraku's my pick.
So I'll throw one other guy that's not really truly an edge, but Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, and that's one where we were going to talk about curveballs a little bit at one point. I've run those scenarios. I've done shows. I've talked about it. It riles up some fans because they just can't wrap their head around why we would take another inside linebacker that high when we have Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones. But Campbell is more versatile than that. He can play edge. He can move around, and McDonald does like to use 3 linebackers. We saw what he did with Malik Harrison in Baltimore as kind of a hybrid edge stack linebacker, even though he had Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. So I love the player. He had labrum surgery. Don't know how far that's going to set him. I think
that's going to drop him. So the last I heard, they think they could put him in the second round.
He's at 18 now, which, a month ago, I don't think any of us thought that.
All right, so let's go with Ezraku. We both have conviction about Ezraku. We think he's a fit. He gives us a little bit something different. Let's take Donovan Ezraku here, and we'll see how this goes. So Barron goes, Loveland goes to the Colts, Emenwari to the Steelers, Gray Zabel at 25.
Booker to the Packers. That one fits, right?
Yeah, Malik Starks to Dan Quinn with the Commanders. There goes Campbell. Jackson Dart to the Giants in the early second round. Kenneth Grant to the Chiefs. And this is getting interesting. Okay, so Donovan Jackson's off the board. Wow, so 7. Wow. This is interesting. The guards really started to take off a bit there.
Milroe to the Colts. How would Anthony Richardson feel about Milroe?
They went full athletic quarterback, Dan. They're going to do a double shotgun set with both quarterbacks standing over the guards, and it'll be directionally snapped either way, and that's how they'll run their offense.
They're going to make Richardson a tight end.
Yeah. So basically, after we made our pick, the reason I don't have this on super fast because I like to look how it goes, but Josh Simmons goes. So we had Barron went, Loveland went, Golden went to the Chargers, which actually makes a lot of sense too in some respects. Tyler Booker, Josh Simmons to the Patriots. They get their pure tackle to protect Drake May. Walter Nolan to the Jags. James Pierce to the Ravens. Scorton Starks. Someone you and me both really like is Ravel, and he goes to the Bills. And Buka goes to the Chiefs. That's the last thing I wanted to see. Xavier Watts, Burden, Ezra, Donovan Jackson. Okay, so based off
that's
this,
higher than Watts has been going.
yeah. So let's go look at our interior line. So Tate Ratledge even left the board there
Higher
early.
than he's been going, yeah.
Yeah. So
And I do think in the real world, and this seems to be gaining some steam too. I do think it's very, very likely that that the Seahawks, with those armed with those extra picks on day 2, aren't going to really enjoy watching all the players go off their board from 18 to 50. And there's a really, I'd be honestly, as I sit here today, I would be surprised if they don't pick again till 50. I think they move up into the second round to really target a guy that they see being able to be an impact player right away.
okay, so we look at OG Wyatt Millam's there as a guard. It doesn't scare me as much as he does as a tackle.
I'm the same there. Yeah.
Jackson Slater's still there. Lucandra's still there. So at O tackle, Marcus Mbu's there, and I think he could be a guard and a good guard.
I think he has to be.
Yeah, he's not a tackle in the NFL.
Tackle, right.
Josh Connerly is really the last true tackle at the high end range. I think we go either Mbu here or we go with Wyatt Millam. And who do you think is a better potential prospect?
I think it's Millam in this case. I just think that it's such a conversion for Bo, and he's, I don't know, he has a weird style too. I think there's some development that needs to happen with Marcus Bo to really be able to play every day. Whereas Millam, I think, is more ready to go as a guard. I didn't like him as a tackle either. He's got some footwork issues on the edge that need to be cleaned up. But I think he's got the athletic profile to be able to get out to the second level, but he's a lot bigger than Bo too. And I think he can really move people at the line of scrimmage. He's got that nasty demeanor and attitude that's kind of lacking from the line. He's not a guy that I typically get in mock drafts just because they don't fall a certain way. And I usually end up with Ratledge at 50, but he's off the board here. So Fairchild would probably be my next choice after those two. But I think this would be a good opportunity to take Millam. I think he would give that line an element that they're lacking.
Okay, and so then just to look at receiver, Jalen Noel's there. Jalen Royals, Jaden Higgins is way underranked in my opinion here at 65.
Yeah, he's starting to get some first round buzz.
Yeah, and Jack Besh is here. Kyle Williams has shot up, which I'm glad to see because I know even though you're a Coug fan and I'm a Husky fan, Kyle Williams is a very good receiver to me, and I think he definitely deserved to come up. So let's go Wyatt Millam here, and then we'll come back with our next pick. So between that, JT went. Oh, that's another good edge player too.
Yep.
All right, so let's go back to the board here. So Tyleik Williams is still here.
I actually, when he was still on the board at 50, I was thinking, some fans might freak if they went defensive line back to back, basically with their first 2 picks. But I have, in the last week or so, I've really come around on Tyleik Williams. I think again, the person, not just the football player, but the person and how he's all about ball and his just work ethic and his leadership there with that Ohio State program. And I think he's one of I think he might be the best pure nose tackle in this draft, but he also has a little pass rush juice too. I think he'd be a phenomenal addition to that defensive line.
So you got to remember, after this pick, we're waiting a long time here. And I think there's enough, potentially.
Well, if this was real, if Jaden Higgins was still on the board at 52, I'm not even thinking about it.
Yeah, and I don't really think Jaden Higgins is going to be there at 52.
I don't think so either.
And so even Jack Besh, I don't know if he's there at 52. I think he might go in the 40s.
Yeah.
So when I look at this, I go, okay, Tyleik Williams being here is actually a potential plausible thing. He could slip a little bit and be in here. And so when I look at this and I go, okay, receiver, there's still guys we can get. Kyle Williams, Torrey Horton's still there. There's still some guys that I think fit Seattle.
Some of those guys will make it to our next batch.
Yeah. And I look at the tight end. You got Mason Taylor, who we know has a visit coming up with Seattle, but that's not throwing a wrench in it. I can see it for you there, Dan.
Yeah. Oh, that's tempting, dude. You know who else is tempting? And I don't have enough time to explain because I'm sure a lot of people watching right now just wouldn't understand it at all. I am absolutely in love with Carson Schwessinger and absolutely think he could coexist with Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight.
I agree.
maybe be better than Tyrese Knight, probably be better. And Tyrese Knight becomes the third linebacker that you can use on the edge sometimes and in certain packages and be basically the guy to back up Mike and Will, but he'd get snaps too. I think he's the arrow's pointing up on him. And I think he's an all pro in the making. This is a tough one.
So here's the rest of the D tackles if we don't take one. So Alfred Collins, Darius Alexander, Joshua Farmer, Ty Robinson's another guy I really like. And I think he's criminally low in this. So do we go with a tight end here?
I mean, Mason Taylor, I think, has almost as much upside as Colson Loveland. Like, it's close to me. And the thing about him is he's so athletic and he's such a great pass catcher. Like, he owns every tight end record in LSU history and he makes it look so easy. But he is such a good blocker, especially in pass protection, that LSU would keep him in sometimes as a pass protector against some of the better defensive lines and better edge rushers that they would face in the SEC. I think he's got greatness written all over him.
So it's between him and Tyreek Williams. Who do you think?
I would go Taylor because I think we saw that defensive tackle depth. I think you can get a guy in the third round.
And we still remember we do have Byron Murphy, who we took at 16 last year, that we still have high hopes for. So let's take Taylor here. And we'll see how this board shapes up. Jaden Higgins, there he goes. And Noel, back-to-back Iowa State guys.
Wow. Yeah.
And you know what? One position group I wish we had looked at that we didn't, and now it bugs me.
Corner.
Is corner.
Yep. Yeah, because after there might be a guy left here at 82, maybe. But the sweet spot for me in this draft for corner is 50 and 52.
We look who went one pick before us. We almost got him back at 82.
We got sniped. Take a look at corner then.
All right, let's look at corner here. There's Kobe Bryant's there. I get it. Quincy Riley's the only one that really I'm interested in. Yeah, other than Jalen Smith, maybe out of USC, but you can get him later on.
Riley's a guy they've met with.
There's no one there that screams anything to me. And then linebacker, Chris Paul's there. He's a good linebacker. Jack Kaiser.
And honestly, this corner class, with the news that came out today that the Seahawks are visiting with Shaq Griffin again. And
tells me Seattle doesn't view it very well.
What's that?
It tells me that Seattle doesn't have high hopes on this draft.
Yeah, and that they do like some of the guys they have. I mean, they like Josh Jobe, and they drafted Pritchett in the 5th round last year, and he got some run last year. I also think that that's another position where they have confidence they can find a fit on day 3 without having to really tap into it. If you can get one of the top guys, if you can get Siobhan Revelle on day 2, man, I'd be all over that. Or even if you traded down in the 1st round. But at this point, I don't like any of those guys enough to take them here.
Do we take a receiver like Jack Besh?
Absolutely.
All right, let's take Jack Besh here at pick 82.
I mean, what's the most common comp that you see for him? It's Puka Nacua. Like, very similar. He's a very physical player. He can handle press coverage, good route runner, catches everything. And we know what kind of person he is.
All right, so we look back at this. So an edge that I actually like is Ashton Gillett. I can't even.
I think it's Gillot.
I think you're right. But I like him because he actually does fit the profile of what Mike McDonald likes. If you were to take an edge, take a swing. But we've already dealt with that. So far we've taken Ezeraku, Wyatt Millen, Mason Taylor, Jack Besh. I want to look back at the offensive line.
Okay. And
let's have a look. So Fairchild's still there. Jackson Slater's still there. Luke Kandra's still there. Clay Webb's still there. Joshua Gray is still there. Willie Lampkin, who I think could be a fullback.
Yeah.
These guys are all still sitting here. So do you want to take Dylan Fairchild, or do you want to see another position?
I wouldn't, because I believe in Christian Haynes and Olu Oluwatimi and Jalen Sundell. And I think taking 2 guards in the first 5 picks is a gross misuse of draft resources. I really do. I'll take a guy on day 3, like a Jackson Slater or a Clay Webb or a Luke Kandra that can play guard or center. I'll take that all day long. And I'm always looking for a swing tackle a potential starting right tackle in the future on day 3 as well. But man, I'm not taking another guard here. I spent about 2 hours watching Christian Haynes tape yesterday and our centers tape. And I'm feeling as good about those spots as ever, especially in this new scheme.
I think Sundell will be the starting center.
He could be, but Olu's good.
I don't disagree that Olu's good. I just think there's one thing John Schneider has said was, I think it was in his last show or the show before, where he said the thing that the coaching staff likes about Sundell is he's smart, tough, and reliable.
And he can play just about anywhere, and he's really athletic too. He's more athletic than Olu.
Do we take Alfred Collins here?
That would be my pick. I think if Tyleik Williams is the best nose tackle in this class, Collins is the second best. Reunite him with Byron Murphy. Like, this dude, he's not quite Tavondre Sweat, but he's big, he's tall, he's long, he's a load. Kind of reminds me of the 49ers a couple of years ago when they had Buckner, and they had, who was the other big, tall, long interior defensive lineman they had at the same time? They had Buckner.
Buckner and Armstead. Yep.
When Carroll kind of name dropped those guys a couple of years ago, said that's what they want to become, and they never really did.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for me, Ashton is the other one here. Galat. He's the other one here for me.
2 edges in the top 5.
So, again, he's a bit, but he's a high motor dude. Like, if you watch him, he just goes.
Reps. Yeah.
So, that's where, because again, you got to think Chenna, we don't know what his, like, whenever Chenna seems to get hurt, we seem to get in trouble off the edge.
Yeah.
We do. And, you got to think, too, of what are you going to pay Boy Mafe? He's up for a contract extension. So you take one, I get it. But again, these top 5 picks or 5 picks in the top 100, you want to try and find as much impact as you can with these. And I get Alfred Collins for sure.
Yeah.
But if an edge like that is sitting there, it's kind of a back and forth. Like, take out the ranking number. Like, we're talking, what do you think Seattle's going to get more? Mike McDonald's going to get more ability to use frequently.
I'd still take Collins.
Okay.
Because I think it fills a bigger void on your roster. And you feel really good. You add Collins to this mix, and you start looking at 20, like what the defense looks like in 26 and 27, and guys that are under contract, you start to feel really good about it.
Okay. Right? All right. We'll go with it. We'll go with Alfred Collins here. Okay. Oh, and Kyle Williams goes to the Saints. Tyler Shuck, there you go. 94 to the Browns.
Yeah, we've got some good suggestions over here in the comments too of some other. I think there's still some edge talent later on that we can tap into for sure.
Wow, a lot of trades that just transpired right there. Kobe Bryant goes to the Saints. There you go. Luke Kandra to the Dolphins. Darn it. This is where I wonder too with Seattle from pick 82 to 137 if they don't move.
Yeah, they sure could.
And there goes Jackson Slater to Detroit. Oh, man. Jeez, we got sniped on quite a few guys here.
Chase Lunt is a guy that I was hoping would get to 137.
As did I. So, okay. Oh, Miles Frazier's there. Clay Webb. Joshua Gray is someone that I'm interested in, but you can take a late flyer on him, I think, as well. Connor Colby from Iowa is someone that I like, and I know Rob Staten's relatively high on. Do we look round 4 quarterback? So Quinn Ewers is there. Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord, Brady Cook. Again, I think he's a 7th round type of guy. Do we take Quinn Ewers? I don't think he's realistically here, Dan.
I don't either. And the closer we get to the draft, the less enamored I am with the idea of taking a quarterback. Especially with the news that now that we have details on Sam Darnold's contract, we know that it's a 2-year commitment.
Yeah.
They can't get out of it for 2 years. Now we know everything else in part the Albert Breer story today. Like, they believe in Sam Darnold and they still have Sam Howell. It doesn't, like, I'll take a flyer on a guy in the 6th or 7th round if there's still one left, to try and develop. But the 4th is rich for me. I'd rather get someone that I think can fit in and actually look at the tackles. Look at offensive tackles.
Okay. Tackles. So Logan Brown's still there.
Yeah, really like
Charles
Logan Brown.
Grant is someone that I'm interested in. He's out of a smaller school, but I think he fits the system really
Did
well.
someone take Jalen Travis already? Oh no, there
Nope,
is. Oh,
he's
they've
right
got
there.
him. They're way too low on him.
Yeah, agreed. And I think they also are way too low on Bryce Caleb out of
He was
Kansas.
a 30 visit for the Seahawks. He's fun to watch. I was watching him yesterday.
He is so smart football IQ wise, like holy.
Really athletic too.
And that's why I think he's ranked too low. I have more of this kind of area grade on him.
Yeah.
4th, 5th round.
This has been a sweet spot for me to take either Logan Brown or Jalen Travis. I think both of those guys can play left and right tackle. Travis, I've flip-flopped these guys in the last 36 hours. Like, I like Travis better than Brown now. He's 6'8", 340 pounds, 35-inch arms. He had the 4th best athleticism score of all the tackles at the combine. He ran a 4.1 440 at that size, a 35-inch vertical. He has Seahawk written all over him. He went to Princeton for 4 years, where he started full-time at right tackle. Then he went to Iowa State and played left tackle. His kick step, like how he gets into his sets, is so explosive. Like, you can't believe this guy's 6'8", 339 pounds. And somebody posted a split screen last night of his relative athletic profile, his RAS.
Yeah.
And he was almost line by line. It was Andrew Whitworth, like his physical profile, and seeing as how he only played 1 year at Iowa State after playing in the Ivy League. Like, I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's a guy that can play left or right tackle. And if they move on from Abe Lucas, he could be your right tackle in the future.
And see, the one thing for me with Logan Brown, I think might take him off, and it's mentioned even in here, is his injury history. That's one thing. Like, I don't think Seattle's going to want to go down that path again of taking a guy that's got some injury histories unless they're going to take. So I would say Jalen Travis, I think we can get later on. I think he's criminally, I agree with you, underrated.
Yeah, let's take advantage of that.
So let's look at linebacker.
Linebacker and safety, we haven't looked at yet.
Danny Studsman, who's someone I like out of Oklahoma. He's still there. I know Michael Thompson really likes him as well. Cody Lindbergh's another one. Jack Kaiser, I know Griff Sturgeon really likes him as well.
I'm a fan too. I like what I'm looking for here is guys that can play strong and weak. That can basically, you're looking for an upgrade over Drake Thomas, right?
Yeah.
And I think a guy like, I think Teddy Buchanan can do that too. Super athletic.
Yeah.
Really, really athletic. But Jack Kaiser is going to be like, Jack Kaiser's such a good locker room dude. He could be the captain of your team even if he's not starting.
Yeah. And he's a good coverage linebacker, right? That's the one thing too that you notice with, Mike McDonald. He does occasionally like to drop, Ernest Jones got those picks throughout the season, as well did Tyrese Knight. They are guys you want to see drop. They use them in coverage to cover up that hook curl, to hook flat area. So let's take Jack Kaiser here.
Plus, that Schneider's going to like him because all those Notre Dame guys and Ohio State guys that bowed out of the Senior Bowl because their season was too long, Jack Kaiser went straight from the college football playoff championship. And once they were done celebrating there, he went straight to Mobile. He wanted to be at the Senior Bowl.
So who's fallen quite a bit, I've noticed in a lot of the rankings, is Jack Sawyer. I just saw him go to the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. Yeah, which I don't really get. Like, I think the concern about him might have been like explosive athleticism, but I thought he had a good combine.
All right, here we go. So Pegues is still there. Majors, Jack Nelson. So let's look at offense. This is where I'd look at the O tackle. So Jalen Travis is still there, which you can still take advantage of. OGs. Connor Colby's someone that, I'd be interested in. Safety-wise, Sebastian Castro, which I'm surprised he's so low on this.
I wonder if it's just he is a little bit of an overaged guy. He's one of those older players, but really like him as a box safety. All
right, let's look at this edge group. So, man, it actually did get a little bit picked over here. Like, I like RJ Oben, but he doesn't have the stats to back up what his physical abilities are.
No, he looks every bit. He looks like you created an edge player in the lab. Yeah.
So Johnny Walker's an interesting one. Again, very undersized. That's his only problem. He's only 249 and 6'2". We already took a smaller guy. Like,
you get down into this range, some of the smaller school guys are interesting. I've had People,
Yeah.
I've had people mention Elijah Williams to me from Oregon or Morgan State. I haven't watched him yet though. Baron Sorrell is a guy out of Texas that I was just watching the other day. He was voted by his teammates at the Senior Bowl as the best edge player in the game, and just the way he conducted himself the whole week and everything. Good, solid two-way edge player. He can defend the run, get after the quarterback a little bit.
I think that's what you're going to be looking at this edge because we got our explosive guys. So Baron Sorrell, definitely someone I'd be interested in.
Ty Robinson's not going to still be there. If he was, I wouldn't even think about it.
What about running back?
I was just going to say there's value to be had here, right?
Jaden Blue, someone that I think could fit in this scheme as a Alvin Kamara type.
It's exactly what it would be. And he would, of all those running backs kind of listed there, well, Jaquez Hunter, who we know the Seahawks had in for a 30 visit, he's a smaller back too. He's a converted receiver, isn't he?
He was, he's 5'9", 204.
Yeah. Both those guys would give you like that true. Blue's just so fast.
Oh, he is unbelievable fast. LaQuinton Allen's another one out of Syracuse.
Do either of those guys have kick return experience?
I think Blue had some, but I can't remember if he did or he didn't.
Because I think that's something the Seahawks would be hunting. You know, now with the rule change, the penalty now, it comes out to the 35, kicking the end zone or out. They went out of their way last year to keep D. Williams on the roster just for that. They signed Laviska Shenault, I think mostly for that. I think they'll be targeting that. I could absolutely see them taking one of those guys.
Okay, so which running back do we like here? LaQuinton Allen's another one that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
6 foot 204. He's great with, catching out of the backfield. He, kind of almost had about 40 yards receiving a game. He doesn't run with great pad level. That is true. Like watching him in his film, he gets a bit high. Yeah. He doesn't, move all that well. So I would say it's between even Jordan James is another one that's interesting to me out of Oregon.
When I can't make decisions like this at this point of the draft, I default to, we know they've had him in for a 30 visit, right?
Okay. Quiz Hunter then. There you go.
Yeah.
This is who we'll take. All right. So we're up again here. Okay. So looking at this, do we take Pegues here?
I could absolutely justify it because of the fullback piece of it, but also because you need another rotation. You need another defensive tackle. We don't know if we're ever going to get anything from Cam Young. Mike Morris didn't take a step forward last year. I know he's a much different body type, but you've got Alfred Collins now and Byron Murphy. You're pretty set inside. You have Jaron Reed. He can play inside or outside. And then obviously Leonard Williams. You need another guy. You're going to rotate guys. I think Pegues could give you something on third downs and be a beast of a fullback and probably be a guy that would be the most fun to talk about after the whole draft is wrapped up.
Okay, so I'm going to give you an option here, Dan. It's Pegues or Jalen Travis.
Jalen Travis.
Okay, we'll take Jalen Travis here.
Because I think the more I look at it, I think even if Abe Lucas has a fully healthy season and plays really well, I don't think they're going to want to pay Lucas and Cross, especially given the fact that they just, unless they are absolutely convinced that knee has completely healed and there's no long-term ramifications they have to worry about, I think they're going to be looking for a guy that can take over at right tackle.
So Pegues went at 199 to the Chargers.
Of course he did. Of course he went to Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, man. Looking at these guys go off, I'm like, okay, these make sense. Tyler Cooper at Baltimore makes sense. Bassa to the Chargers. There goes Shadora's brother to the Giants.
He's not getting drafted.
All right. So now that we're back here, let's go look at all. So Ty Hamilton's here out of Ohio State. Do we look at another receiver or tight end? Jackson Hawes is here.
So Jalen Conyers is a guy that I had on my list that I wasn't going to talk about until we got to this point because he's absolutely a potential fullback candidate. He's different. He's different than these other guys. He's 6'3.5", 260. He has really sure hands. He has a 4% drop percentage, good run blocker, very, very consistent production at Arizona State and Texas Tech in his last year. He was number one among all tight ends in FBS last year with 21 missed tackles forced. So run after the catches there. But they also used him as a wildcat quarterback. He had 22 rushes for 92 yards and a touchdown. He's thrown some balls. He has some quarterback in his background. He's a fullback. He's that H-back fullback guy that I think you can get here for tremendous value. And
sold. I'm sold.
Yeah.
All right. So now we come down to our last pick.
Got to get a special teams guy. This where it might make some sense, like you were saying, to take either another receiver or just somebody that would excel on special teams, right? We haven't taken a safety.
Nope. And Maxine Hook is here from Toledo, and I think he's a good fit.
Yep, me too. He's got some corner in his background too, so we know how.
Play him in the nickel if you needed to. He's 6 foot 202. He did have a really good couple seasons with Toledo and what he's done. And, he posted a 4.55 and a 34-inch vertical. Like he's also an efficient tackler. You watch his tape when he gets to you, he gets you on the ground. He doesn't miss very often. So I think he's a guy that, could play in 3 safety sets. So I think we take Hook here.
Yeah, he's going to be a demon on special teams too.
Yeah.
Give you something a little bit bigger than Jarek Reed.
All right. So that'll be our class, which will be very interesting to see how. Wow, Jackson Oz went late 248 to the Saints.
He's just so stiff as an athlete.
Yeah. All right. So that's our class. So we got Donovan Ezeraku, Wyatt Millam, Mason Taylor, Jack Besh, Alfred Collins, Jack Kaiser, Jaquiz Hunter, Jalen Travis, Jalen.
Dude, there's so many Jalen's in this draft class.
I know, it's ridiculous.
And they're all spelled differently. I can't keep up.
And Maxton Hook.
We took 2 of them.
Yep, we did. I'm okay with that. Like this draft, like this is us sticking and picking, and I think we, did some good things. I know everyone was saying, "Hey, trade." Now we'll do our trade one.
Okay.
All right, let's get back out.
Dreams gave us a fire emoji. So
yeah, someone gave us that, which is good. So some people like it, some people won't like it. That's all, We'll take it with a grain of salt. So
what's our approach on this one now?
We can trade. We can move.
Okay.
So Steelers make an offer to us. That's the only trade offer we have.
If you want to get really aggressive with a trade, the one I looked at trade possibilities the other day.
Just so
what's Brandon? He wants 5 defensive tackles.
I'm sure
offensive linemen
want us to go, like, if we had one skill position out of all of our picks, he'd be happy. He'd be happy. He'd be like full on. We're going full O-line and full nose tackles. I like it.
Right.
All right. So let's take a look here.
I think Rockman's on to something. Let's do a trade down and then let's try to trade up in the
sure. I'm on board with that. So let's just look here. So Cam Ward went 1. Jason Graham, that's Travis Hunter. So there's no way he makes it to Carolina.
I just want to
refer to the Giants, Abdul Carr to the Patriots, Tyler Warner to the Jags, Genty goes there, Shedeur Sanders again to the Jets, Will Campbell to the Saints. That makes some sense. Jalen Walker, like we said, goes to Chicago. Calvin Banks to San Francisco. Mike Green, like that is, there's a couple in here, but again, it felt pretty relative. So, all right, we're here at 18. Now, who do we want to trade back with?
So the trade that I did a show on this last week, the trade that absolutely matches the most evenly, the easiest, cleanest trade that matches on the Rich Hill trade chart is to trade back to 25 with Houston, and you get one of their 3rd rounders.
Okay, so let's do that. So
if you trade back with Pittsburgh, you get a 4th.
Now, what if you did this? What if you traded with the Chiefs and took their 63 and a pick next year?
You're going to make me get the trade chart out, aren't you?
I'm going to make you do it. So if we went, just say hypothetically with the Chiefs.
I don't think anyone is trading 2026 picks.
So here's my thought. What if they did this? The Chiefs come up and they give us pick 63 and they give us their 4th round pick next year.
I don't think they would do that. Let me see. So
but what happens if they want to come up and get a Matthew Golden to help that receiving core?
Yeah, I could see that. Are they going to go back to Texas wide receiver 2 years in a row?
They might.
It's about 100-point difference. That could get you 63, and they could throw in 133. They've got an extra third, so they have 2 thirds. So they might be willing to do that. You could do it. It's almost an exact match for them to go from 31 to 18, and you would get 63 and 133.
Okay, so go from there. Okay, so hold on. So R18 for 31, 63, and what was the other pick?
133. Now,
okay.
PFF's a little tighter, or PFN's a little tighter. I would like throw in our first next year just to get it approved.
Let's see if it works initially, and then if not, I'll go back to it with our first.
Because PFN doesn't follow trade charts at all.
Yeah. Okay, so you're right, Dan. Okay, so we'll do it again, and we'll throw that in. So our 18.
That's probably the most aggressive trade that could even conceivably be offered.
Yeah, let's do something a little different. Let's go with this one.
And that would match up pretty cool with the Tony Pauline. No, Pauline had the edge story, but I saw there was another report this week that people around the league think that the wide receiver run could start with the Seahawks 18.
All right, so let's do this. Okay, so it's been accepted. Realistically, the first isn't a part of it. Okay, so Cincinnati's given us 49 wanting to come up. No. And Green Bay, yeah, no. So let's see who went. They came up and they took Michael Williams, so fine. Shamar Stewart, Tyler Booker.
Told us they were going to take a receiver. Those
lying liars. Campbell goes to the Rams. That's the worst case scenario, and I don't want to ever see that. Josh Simmons, Derek Hammond, Gray Zabel.
I disagree. I think worst case scenario is if we watch the Rams take Jackson Dart.
That's true too. Okay, so we're sitting here now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at offensive guard. So Donovan Jackson's there.
Mm-hmm.
Do we go with that or do we go somewhere else?
I'm immediately gravitated to one name on that list, and somebody in our comments just hit it too. At 31, I'm taking Siobhan Revell at 31. To me, that's a steal. He is such a high level cornerback prospect that if he doesn't hurt his knee, he's going in the top 15. Okay,
so if I do make this now, do you want to try and trade back up now into the second round so we don't have to wait?
Oh yeah, because you have it set on fast, don't you?
Yeah.
Because who would we be trying to trade up for? Donovan Jackson? Let's
probably
try
Donovan
that scenario.
Jackson.
Let's play with that. We'd probably have to get up to,
I'd say somewhere in here.
Probably ahead of the Titans and Jags. They need offensive line help.
So we're getting back to Cleveland.
Hey, we could spend the night negotiating to try and move up with him. Let me see what that would cost.
Okay.
So to trade all the way up to 33 from 50 is 65 points, which it's a little bit of an overpay. Let's see. Oh, wait. No. I'm doing it backwards. I need to look at our values. So yeah, to go from 50 to 33 is 65 points, which would equal 82 and 172.
Okay, so give them pick. Where am I looking here? Pick 82.
Yep.
And they give, it was 82, and what was the other one? Sorry,
172.
Okay. And let's see if it works.
It won't.
No, it didn't. We'll throw in another next year pick. But I think you're right. I think that's where we'd have to get to.
Yeah. And I would do that. Like that's why this is a fun exercise. Like taking these X picks and making them count, you still are going to end up with 2/3. And there's a ton of value there. And the other second.
They rejected that one too, even with their second round pick next year.
Just give them all our picks next year.
What if we go to the Giants? What if we go to
It's
the
my-
Giants? Let's try with the Giants.
It's my one issue with PFN is they just don't
Yeah.
make it. To go to the
So,
Giants is
34. I'll give him 182. I'll do the same deal.
you don't have to though. You can go 82 and 175. You can save yourself 4 spots.
175. We don't have 175 on this. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yep. I didn't scroll.
We have so many
incorrectly.
picks. You had to scroll down.
I was like, wait, what? Nope. It's been rejected again. God damn.
Just give them all the picks for next year. If anyone working for PFN just happens to be watching this live stream,
this is ridiculous.
Add a forced trade solution because that absolutely matches on the trade charts.
This is ridiculous. This is annoying. I will say this is you're right, Dan. This is the one annoyance of PFF or PFN, sorry, is you can't force trades.
Right.
133, 175, and then just go bang, 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 bang. Oh, now they accept it. Hallelujah. Okay, so we're taking who at 31 did you want? Ravel?
Yeah, Ravel, and then we were hoping that
Donovan Jackson.
Philadelphia doesn't snipe Donovan Edwards from us.
Do we really want to risk that, or do we want to go Jackson and then
Jackson,
Ravel?
how do they have him ranked? No, yeah, I think it's fine.
All right. Okay. So the Jags are offering us to drop a couple more spots.
The Eagles took Donovan Jackson. No, they didn't. Oh, they took Donovan. They took the other Donovan. That scared me.
Okay, now we get Donovan Jackson.
Take Jackson there. All right, cool. I like it.
Okay. And now we're up again. So Pitt's offered us 83 and they're second to come up. No, I don't like that.
Wait a minute. Why do we still have 50 and 52?
Did I forget to move 52?
Yeah, 50? That's 50 we gave away in the trade.
Oh, weird.
We were supposed to have. Yeah, that's why they wouldn't. That's why they wouldn't.
Whoops.
Yeah.
We traded our whole draft capital to move up.
Yeah, we moved from 50. So just take some schmuck.
Well, I could just trade out of it.
Yeah, that's true too.
Let me just do this. I'll trade with Tennessee, and I'll take a pick from them next year, and they can have this one. There. Now it's more realistic. We're out of that spot. Okay, so now we're at pick 52. The Giants offer $65.99. Cleveland's again trying to get more. No, you annoyed us, Cleveland. We don't want to trade with you anymore.
That's right. Hey,
okay.
The snail is recommending Kyle Williams.
I know that's one for me. Okay, so we've taken our OG. We've taken a corner. Jackson Dart's still on the board, Dan. Where do you think we go here? Do we go with an edge here now because we've addressed one side?
Who do you have?
So we've got on this side for edge, JT.
I like Femi better.
Yep.
I think he has more upside, but Tuimoloau is a guy that, like, man, he's an edge setter. He's a culture setter. He's a locker room dude. He's an A+ character. He's from Federal Way, Washington. He played high school football at Federal Way, Washington. Like, he's a big edge. I think he can get in a 4-point stance and reduce inside too. He'd be a lot of fun.
So let's look here. Offense, receiver. Jaden Higgins is still there.
He won't be.
I know. I can dream though, Dan. I can dream. Carson Swessinger.
So now we're giving up picks, right? Trying to hunt guys that we think are really going to make an impact. And so maybe Swessinger doesn't make as much sense. Plus, I just don't want to have to pronounce that name for years at a time. I think edge makes a lot of sense here. I think
so do you want to go with
either Tuimoloau or I think, again, if we're trying to predict what the Seahawks are going to do, I think Femi Oladejo is absolutely cut from Seahawks cloth. Like, he is A+ character, again, leader. They call him the mayor. He leads everything he touches. He reminds me of Derek Hall 2 years ago, the kind of person he is and the way his demeanor and the way he comes across. And also you're just skimming the surface. It's tip of the iceberg with what he can do as an edge player after converting from off-ball linebacker. So I think he's a perfect fit in a Mike McDonald defense. as a guy that could be a hybrid. And even if Ernest Jones were to get hurt and go down, like this guy could play Mike linebacker for you in a pinch too.
That's true. All right, let's go with Femi then. So we'll go with Femi. All right. And now we're up again at 63. So we've had some offers, 83, 123 to come up. 103. Yeah, none of those are appealing. Okay, so now where do we go here, Dan? What are you thinking?
Look at remind me what we got so far.
So we have pick 63 here. So we've got corner, OG, edge.
Defensive tackle, defensive line, right?
Okay, TJ Sanders, Darius Alexander, someone I like out of Toledo a lot.
I do too. I just wonder if is his skill set a little too redundant with Murphy. Sanders is fun.
There's Collins again.
I think that's
someone that I think is going to get into this area is probably Joshua Farmer. I think he's underrated right now in this.
Yeah, there he is, 104 Florida State.
Yeah. High motor. He's big. He can move.
Have we taken a receiver yet?
We have not.
We got to look at that. That's going to fall off pretty quick.
Jack Bash. I think we take Bash. I think this is where actually probably he'll go.
Alec Manor is a guy that I think the Seahawks are going to have a high grade on. He's the best run blocker of all the receivers in this entire class. Good size, speed combination. Really good route runner. If you don't want to just take the same guys we took the last one, I think he'd make a lot of sense here.
Okay, let's go with him. Okay.
You got to, just thinking about the identity that McDonald wants to.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Atlanta's giving us this.
Should we look at tight ends?
Yeah, let's look at tight end. Gunnar Helm. Oh, Arroyo's there, and he can block. Have you watched him block?
I have, yeah.
And I think he has athletic upside. I think he makes a lot of sense here if he's somehow here.
Yeah, I'd be cool with taking him.
Okay.
Seahawks are going to have to be confident he can stay healthy. He really couldn't his first 3 years in college. That's a big sticking point with the Seahawks. But, man, he's so explosive as a receiver.
All right, let's go with him here. All right, so Shmar Turner still there. David Walker. Jackson Slater. He makes sense here.
Not as much sense as Chase Lunt.
That's true. So Chase Lund?
I'm so in love with him right now. He's one of my hardest draft crushes, even more than Jalen Travis. We just couldn't get him in the last one. This guy does damage when he gets to the second level. Like he shows up with a purpose. He's really athletic. Some feel like he could play a little bit of guard and pitch. He's only played one snap at guard, but I think he's the next. I think he takes over for Abe Lucas in 2026.
Okay, let's go with Chase Lund. Okay, and yeah, I'm not even entertaining that. So now where do you want to go with this? We've gone corner, Ohio State edge. Donovan Jackson, edge with Femi, receiver, tight end, and again, O-tackle, potential guard player. Now where do we go?
If you're just looking at the overall board, I wonder how they're going to view Danny Stutzman.
That's who I had in mind.
He's a guy that's so physical. He's one of the only real true thumpers as a middle linebacker in this class. But can he cover well enough?
I'm not sure. Here, Dan, you know what? Debate this for a little bit. I will be right back.
Put it on the all screen there so we can see that a little bit while you're. No, okay. Yeah, at this point in the draft, like I think we've checked our biggest boxes, right? Like our biggest voids and needs on the roster that we're all stressing the most about, that we feel like we need to fill in to balance things out and set this roster up for the future. I think we've kind of checked all those boxes, right? So we just kind of go best player available from here on out is that we think would fit the Seahawks is kind of the way to go. I don't know if you could hear me there or not.
Yeah, I can. There you go, Dan. I've set it up for you so you can just talk for a second. I'll be back. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm not able to move this around. What do you guys think based on what we have so far in our picks and what's left on the board? Which way would you guys go? No, he did not put it on all. So we can't see it. Yeah, Stutzman's. It's so hard to tell with inside linebackers these days, especially guys that project as Mike or play it in college, because you can get away with being 6'3", 6'4", 235, 240 pounds and not being able to go sideline to sideline, right? In college, if you're just coming forward. We don't see many guys anymore that are built like Jack Campbell, Detroit 2 years ago. Although this year in this draft, Jahad Campbell kind of fits that mold. Demetrius Knight kind of fits that mold. But at this point, I almost think rather than Stutzman, if you're looking linebacker here, you're probably looking at a guy that can play both positions, play weak or strong, drop into coverage a little bit. And yeah, we haven't taken a defensive tackle, have we? I see a lot of you saying Jamari Caldwell. I wish I could control this. I don't know what happened. Sorry about this, guys. But as soon as he gets back, we'll take a look at the defensive tackles because I think that's kind of the way to go. We haven't taken one yet, have we? Yeah, but I see what you're saying, Misfit, but it's BPA, but it's based on what? PFN's rankings? What if we don't agree with those or don't think those guys, exhibit Seahawk characteristics, or if they have an injury history, if they have character issues? That's why we have to kind of play around with these. But until he gets back, there's nothing we can do. Sorry about that, guys. But as far as linebackers go, since that's all we're looking at here, I think a guy like Buchanan or Bossa would make more sense here because they can play both spots. They can cover. Jay Higgins is another guy with some athleticism. Ty Robinson, if he's there, Dreams, I see that. He's a guy I'd be all over. I think this is probably about the latest you're going to get Robinson. I think there's a chance Ty Robinson goes on day 2, but there's so much depth on the defensive line that there is an opportunity for us to potentially get him here. He's a guy that I love. He can play inside and outside. And I think that's, if you're not getting one of those top end guys that are really, really explosive, then that's kind of who you're looking for here. Somebody that McDonald can move all the way up and down the line, right?
I'm back. Apologies for that, everyone.
No worries.
All right. So what do you want to do here, Dan?
We're getting a lot of defensive tackle love here because we haven't taken one yet, have we?
I don't believe we have.
We're talking about TJ Sanders. We were talking about Josh Farmer. Yeah, check out defensive tackles.
All right. I will do that. Just give me 1 second here. Get this back up to the way I want it to be. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at defensive tackle. So Caldwell's there. There's Ty Robinson again. He's not 177, and he's not going to be going at pick 137. I think he's going to be somewhere between 82 and 100.
That's what we were saying while you were gone. Yeah, I do think this is probably about the latest he might potentially still be available.
Do you want to take him here?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we'll take Ty Robinson. There's our
he
tackle.
fits, and I do think he'd be best player available. Misfit?
Yeah, I think Misfit's right.
Go back to my picks again. I need to catch up. Where are we at on my picks?
So we've got Ravel, Jackson, Oladejo. I keep screwing up his name, and I'm not going to say it.
It's Io Manor.
Io Manor, thank you. And then Arroyo, Lund, and Robinson.
Yep.
So based on this, do we look at linebacker?
That's what we were talking about while you were gone. Is maybe trying to find a guy that can play both spots. Cody Simon, Ohio State, fits that mold. Nick Martin, those guys are ranked low.
Cody Lindbergh's another one, I think.
He can get after the quarterback too. He's longer. I like Lindenberg. He really surprised me when I saw him at the Senior Bowl. He's long and lanky, kind of. He's physical, but you think he probably can't. He can't go sideline to sideline. And then like his short shuttle and 3-cone were really good.
Yeah,
and he can cover. Yeah, I'd be cool with Lindenberg here, and he's the.
So I'm going to put one comment up on the Jason Wolf comes in when we still don't have a center.
We have 2 of them, Jason. Very good ones. Go watch some Oluwatimi and Jalen Sundell tape. I spent the last 2 days doing that. I don't think they're looking for a center. And John Schneider's
John Schneider said it.
He's already on record as saying it's not a good center class.
Yeah.
We don't need.
All right. So we're here. So let's look at linebacker again. What about safety? Is there anything in safety that's interesting? Castro's there. Hook's there.
I love that. I can see Mike McDonald loving Sebastian Castro, and he's built like a guy, and his game is similar. That he can almost be a weak side linebacker for you. Like he can be that third linebacker the way McDonald likes to use him, because he can cover tight ends and running backs.
So do we go Castro or do we go with a linebacker?
I would go Castro. I like Castro better than the linebackers that are left on the board.
Okay.
But that's just me.
All right. So we took our safety that I think could play in that 3 safety look. He's going to give you the same things Rayshawn Jenkins did last year. All right. So now we're back here. So where do you want to go from here, Dan? With my picks.
7th round, you have 2 picks. I think you're looking at guys that can contribute on special teams, right? You're looking for a kick returner and then maybe somebody else at a skill position that can play teams.
Okay.
Andrew Armstrong's a guy that's really interesting too. So he was brought to my attention by a viewer a few weeks ago. He's 6'4", tall, maybe one of the most natural hands catchers in this class. Like he just snatches everything out of the air. But he is probably the 2nd best run blocking tight end or receiver in this class behind Io Manor. Like he's one of the receivers I've enjoyed this draft season watching all 22, because even when he doesn't get the ball thrown to him, he's still fun to watch because he's looking for someone to hit. But in this range though, you're probably looking for someone that can take the top off. There's Jarquez Hunter again. If you're looking for a guy that can return kicks. Is there a speed merchant? Kyron Lacey's not going to be a Seahawk.
Jalen Travis is still there.
Did we take a tackle?
We did. We took Lund, but he could potentially be a guard.
Yeah. We're good there. Trevor Etienne, he's not going to be there.
No.
That's kind of ridiculous. I mean, Ty Hamilton. Oh, no. I thought that was Ty Robinson again. I was like, we already took him. Nazir Stackhouse, somebody suggested in the chat.
Yeah, he's a possibility.
There? He's a big dude that can play like true nose tackle, which is something we don't have yet. Or YL Black. Yeah. The only thing about Black though is I got to
he struggles with leverage.
Well, and watching him at the Senior Bowl too, I think he's got some. Like every time a fight broke out in Mobile, he was in the middle of it. Like he just seemed like a guy who had an edge to him, and not the good kind of edge.
Yeah. All right, let's take Nazir Stackhouse here.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Thanks, Dreams. Right. He's a massive boy. He's young. I remember when we thought he was coming out in the draft last year, he was projected much higher.
So, someone that's interesting to me that you mentioned about kick returning possibilities is actually Woody Marks.
Oh, absolutely. An outstanding pass catcher out of the backfield.
And the thing I think you could do with him that's also interesting is you could move him into the slot. If you wanted to get him on the field in some ways to do some different things, he could potentially be a guy that you could use in those kind of creative ways that Kubiak uses certain people. I think Marks could be an interesting guy here as a running back.
Yeah, I'd be down with that.
Okay, let's go with Marks then. All right. So this is our second one with trades all involved, as you guys can see, multiple trades. Between the two, Dan, which one do you like better?
Honestly, I like the first one better. I like the way it just fell. Although I will say this. Oh, can you show me the first one again? Now I can't remember.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me bring this back. I'll get us all set up here.
Maybe I don't like that one better because this one, I kind of think I like this one better. Siobhan Revell is an absolute cornerback 1. I think Donovan Jackson's better than Wyatt Milam. And he's a guy that can play tackle in a pinch. He can get you out of a game at tackle.
So this was our other one, Dan.
I think the second one is more of an identity draft. Like you're getting the wide receiver that can punish you as a blocker. You're getting that, Donovan Jackson's a guy that can play guard and tackle, something that I don't have faith that Milam could do if you need to. Ravel, I think, can be, again, I think he has all pro upside as a corner, and also gives you that identity in the run game. Like, he loves to come up and hit. Femi is like A+ character leadership, and, tip of the iceberg is an edge player. Chase Lunt is like that nastiness that you want on the offensive line, no matter where he ends up. I kind of think the second one is a little bit better of an identity draft.
The thing for me with the second one is from 31 to 90 to 133. Those, 6 picks.
Yeah.
I think you get extreme value, and you get guys that can come in and make some sort of impact on either the defense or the offense this year.
Yep.
Ravel comes in and he maybe plays your third corner, or he pushes Woolen, and Woolen's now potentially a piece that you may inevitably end up trading. Like, that becomes an option now.
Yeah, or he pushes Job out, and they keep.
Yeah, exactly. And then you got Donovan Jackson, who comes in and immediately is your left guard. Right. He is going to be your guard beside Cross. Aladejo comes in and he is your rotational pass rusher that gives you some flexibility, gives you a little bit more than what Mafe and Hall give you in speed. Io Manor comes in and he's now learning from Cooper Kupp. He gives you a little bit of something else, and eventually takes over for Kupp, I think, in 2 years with JSN. Arroyo comes in and gives you a true threat down that seam and another good run blocker. And Lund gives you a guy that could come in and be your right guard, or if Abe Lucas doesn't pan out, becomes your right tackle.
Yeah, I don't think Lunt starts as a rookie. I don't think he's in the mix at all, but I think he gives you that upside moving forward for sure. Yeah. So
with that being said, let's get to the viewer Q&A part of this, guys. So get your questions in here. I've seen some of them. I start a couple to start with. Dana was in here earlier. She said, "What's going on?" So it was good to see that Dana jumped into the chat here. But yeah, so like when I look at the drafts that we just did, Dan, for me, the biggest thing that stands out is we really went and attacked certain things that we know are going to be things the Seahawks are potentially going to look at.
Yeah, and that's like Misfit was making a great point in the comment. We hear about best player available all the time, and that's what we're proponents of. It's what Schneider talks about. But he also, I think this has gotten missed over the last year or two when talking especially about the offensive line and how we need that. And this happens with John. Sometimes he'll come out and he'll say something and then he doesn't say it perfectly. And so he has to kind of backtrack on it later. But when he a couple of years ago, he said, we don't draft for need at the top of the draft. We draft for best player available only. We stick to our board. And then we look at need a little bit stronger on day 3. What he didn't explain at the time, and he has since, but a lot of fans have not listened to, is that they incorporate need into their draft grade. And so when they say we're going to take the number 1 guy on our board when we're sitting at 18 and we're just going to stay true to our board, well, grade is factored into, or need is factored into that grade. So the higher the need on their roster, the higher the grade's going to be. And so you do have to consider need. And especially in this draft too, I think more than any I've seen in the last 10 years, it doesn't just follow a predictable pattern. It's all over the place, and so you don't know if someone's going to be available in the 3rd round or the 4th round or the 5th round, because I've never seen mock drafts be so all over the place. Daniel Jeremiah even joked about it today. He said, "Hey, I talked to a bunch of GMs and they say there's going to be 47 first-round draft picks this year." I was actually going to do an exercise this week where I was going to take like 5 or 6 of the biggest mock drafts, right? Matt Miller, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, all those guys, Dane Brugler, and count how many different players total show up in all those mocks. And I bet DJ's close. I bet it's 45 to 50 players. And so, none of us can sit here and go, he's a first rounder for sure. There's no way he gets out of the 2nd round, because we don't know. Not this year.
Yeah, and this draft I think is going to be interesting because it'll be interesting to see how other teams around Seattle in the same area value certain players and decide what they're going to do. I think there could be a lot of movement this year, more than maybe we've seen in the past, of teams wanting to go and get guys that they know there's going to be all of a sudden a cliff at a certain positional group, more so than in past drafts where it's been a little bit more dispersed. I think now you're going to see a situation where you may see teams moving all over the place to try and snag their guys. You know, like, why'd this team jump here? And, oh, they took that guy. Well, in the mocks, he was down here. Well, he might fit something they know is a cliff is going to come, and they're not going to get anyone that fits what they're looking for.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
So, yeah, no, it'll be really interesting. Guys, we're going to go for a few more minutes here. So if you have any other questions or anything you want to get them into the chat. Me and Dan are going to do this probably for another 10 minutes here, and then we're going to wrap it up. So, guys, yeah, get your comments, questions in. And the one thing I'm going to say is I have gone after John Schneider made his comment about the center class. I really went back and looked at it. And everyone's talking about Wilson or Majors or some of these guys. I don't look at any of them and go, yeah, they're a must need to come out of this draft. Like, this is not a overly impressive center group. Like, Wilson has the one real year of starting at Georgia. And again, he started at Georgia and he did quite well. But if I'm going to get a center, I want to make sure that this guy's got multiple years of starting at a big program that can show what, come in and actually be an impact player at center if we're going to do that. Otherwise, you look at Olu, he started for what, 2 or 3 seasons at Michigan from Jim Harbaugh of all coaches. Like, wasn't just, some kind of, passover. Like, he was quite good as a center there in that scheme. And I think, him and Sandell.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dan?
Didn't give up a single sack.
No, exactly. So, that's where I'm kind of interested. Okay, here we go. Here we got some good questions coming in. So Sean here comes in. Sean, welcome back into the chat here. And Milroe invited to the draft. What team wants him in the first? That's true. He has decided to go to the draft. Dan, what team do you think's interested in him? I know Pittsburgh's one.
It's the Steelers. Like, we know that because they signed, who were their 2 quarterbacks last year? Justin Fields, right? And Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson's not the player he was 10 years ago, obviously, but that skill set with Arthur Smith there is obviously something that they think they can work with and that they're attracted to. And I think especially if they get this thing done with Aaron Rodgers, that the timeline kind of matches, where if Rodgers can give you a year or two while Milroe kind of works out some of his accuracy issues, like, I talked about it on the show last night, like you tap into the potential there. It could go either way, but if you can unlock his ceiling, you have a big time dynamic playmaker there at the quarterback position. So I think it's Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Pittsburgh as well. I think Pittsburgh is going to walk out of round 1 with either Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe. Yeah,
and if it's Milroe, like, maybe Dart does get out of the first round, right? Unless, although the other thing to consider here too is, it's looking more and more now like Cleveland's not going to take a quarterback at 2. They're probably going to take Travis Hunter. And so they might be looking to trade up then from 33 to get back into the first round to get whoever falls, And so we could, after all this talk about how bad this quarterback class is, and it was never as bad as people were saying it was, 4 or 5 months ago. But we might end up getting 4 guys taken in the first round.
That's very, very true. All right, we got Ian Victor in here. Ian's been one of our members for a while. Have a feeling that Mbuka will be the pick at 18 and not everyone will like it, but also have a feeling that a trade up in the second round for a guard or tight end. I have become more and more willing to accept the fact that there's a chance Seattle, like you talked about earlier, Dan, when we started this exercise, is going to take, potentially a skill position player at 18. Mm-hmm. If they can't trade back, that they're going to take somebody. And everything I've heard, everything I've talked to with people that I know that are connected, there's a good chance that Mbuka is very high on Seattle's board.
Yeah, and why wouldn't he be? He's a complete receiver. He's, again, I know I keep saying this, but he's A+ character. Like, that means something to the Seahawks. They're not going to take a guy they're not sure about, committing himself to the program and to football. And he's a guy that can play slot. He can play outside. I think his skill set is complementary to what they have on hand, but also doesn't need to be. If you look at those Rams and 49ers teams, when they were rocking and rolling with those Shanahan and McVay schemes, they had a bunch of guys that kind of looked the same, right? Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. They don't have they don't have a diverse skill set where they have, you know, a taller guy for the red zone, and they have another speedster that can take the top off, and then they have a slot merchant. Those guys are all interchangeable. They can all run a full route tree. That's Emeka Egbuka. And he's also from the area. Like, how cool would it be to bring him home, right? John Schneider just said recently, we want guys that want to be here. Emeka Egbuka definitely wants to be here.
No, agreed. And actually, you know, following that up, Jason goes in another slot. We need an outside receiver. Jason, I really, really implore you to go and watch the history of this offense. And there isn't really slots versus outside guys. And this goes all the way back to Gary Kubiak and Mike Shanahan running it in Denver. Go look at the receivers. They are more than usually comparable in their size, their measurables. They're looking for guys that block. They're looking for guys that can be interchangeable. They're not looking for certain skill sets, whether it's slot versus outside. It's whether or not you guys can be interchangeable, and we can use multiple guys that look the same. That's where I think you're going to see the difference in Seattle's direction with receivers going forward when it comes to drafting.
Sorry, that was
drafting them and whatnot. So here's an interesting one from MWM, always in our chat. I like Gideon at center from Western Michigan in later rounds. I haven't really had a chance to look at him, so I'm not too familiar with them.
The other thing about the center situation is it's not just that they don't like the class. It's what's one of the other things that John Schneider says all the time. We grade for our roster, not for the league. They feel so good about Oluwatimi and Sundell that when you're in the 5th round, you're thinking about taking a kid from Western Michigan to play center. Is he better than Jalen Sundell or Oluwatimi? Can he beat either of those guys out for a roster spot right now? Because you're not going to keep 3 centers. That's what it comes down to. Oluwatimi's entering his 3rd year in the league. Sundell his 2nd year in the league. And, they're just now getting a unified coaching staff with a ton of experience in the league that's bringing in a scheme that they're used to coaching, and they're used to coaching it together, and they like those 2 guys. That's the thing. When I started the draft process 3 months ago, there were a bunch of centers I liked. I liked Jake Majors. I liked Jonah Monheim. I liked Jackson Slater. None of those guys beat out Oluwatimi or Sundell this year. They just don't. And so I don't want to waste a draft pick on them, not unless they have some really, really dynamic upside. And in which case I'd put them up against Jalen Sundell and say, run the combine drills, and Sundell will make them all look foolish.
Yeah, agreed. As we saw him when he pulled and led for Charbonnet down the sideline versus Green Bay, which is still one of my favorite plays from this season. Rockman and Drums, the 18th pick should be interesting. Agreed. It's going to be interesting to see what Seattle does there. And this is over from your channel there, Dan. Armat comes in. I think that the Hawks are in a perfect spot at 18. Will there be a few blue chip player teams have rated as such? Not John, though. Chargers want Loveland and don't want to get sniped, and the Steelers, I don't know. Oh, Steelers need a QB is what he follows up with.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think the closer we get to this draft, the less confident I am that they're going to stay at 18.
Agreed.
I think there hasn't been any movement yet, and this is the closest we've ever been to the draft where every single one of the 32 picks in the first round belongs to the native team in their native spot. No one has traded a first-round pick yet. But I think because of this class, because it is so varied, but the talent level so even from 10 to 80, it's all about what teams like and what they need. And I just feel like someone at a certain position group is going to be available there at 18 that someone's going to want to come up and get. And the Seahawks are going to be able to get a little bit of value by sliding back. Which I think that second draft that we did is probably going to more closely emulate, not an aggressive, Kansas City trade probably isn't going to happen, right? No. But a slight move back and then a move up in the second round. I think that kind of movement all throughout the 3 days is probably what we're going to see this year.
I'd agree. And here's another one from Tom. Don't be surprised if the Rams take the franchise quarterback in round 1. As long as it is not Jackson Dart, I am perfectly okay.
I think there's a good chance they do. I think Tyler Shuck would be in play there because of the timeline and because of Stafford's age. And then if neither of those happens, I could really see him liking Kyle McCord a little bit later on too. But I'd be shocked if they don't come out of this draft with a legitimate next quarterback that they feel like has a shot to develop anyway, which means I think they'll probably take a guy on the first 2 days.
I agree. And we got one here from Dakra. I know it's simplistic thinking, but if Zabel's there, I just take him. Just really want to fix this O-line. One player is not going to fix this O-line. I get the premise, and everybody, we all want this O-line to be fixed. It is going to be a process to fix this. We can't snap our fingers and add one player and it's going to get better. You may get Gray Zabel, and it may solve a small piece of that puzzle, but there's still 3 other spots that we need to deal with potentially. You know, with Abe Lucas's uncertainty still with his health, you still got right guard, you still got center you got to solidify, even though Olu and Sundell are here and we both like them, and the Seahawks like them, there's still moving pieces on this. The biggest thing you got to look at, and it's not so much about best player available sometimes or draft stock of where they go, you need 5 guys that work as one. That is the key. And if you look at some of the greatest offensive lines in history, their draft pedigrees are all over the place. There's not a team that's like stacked from rounds 1 and 3 of just starters that have excelled.
Yeah. I love Zabel. I would be excited if they took him. I just think that the difference in quality between Gray Zabel and what you can get at 50 and 52 is nil. It's almost nil. Like I can make an argument that Tate Ratledge would have a better NFL career than Gray Zabel or Jonas Savanaia, or maybe even Wyatt Milam, although I think Zabel would have a better career. But you see what I'm saying? Whereas, you know, if you pass up the opportunity to take a guy that you think can be a difference maker at a skill position or as a pass rusher, like a premium position, you're probably not getting an equal talent in the second round if you go Zabel in the first.
Agreed. And the last one we'll end on here is from Ian again. He goes, I have a sneaky feeling the Raiders take either Will Howard or Quinn Ewers in round 2.
I think Ewers is doing a 30 visit with the Raiders.
He is.
I saw it today. But, I mean, Howard makes sense, obviously, with there. Yeah.
And one last one from Dave. I know he constantly contributes to you, Dan, over there. If Dart gets past Pittsburgh, the Rams are taking him. Let's hope not, Dave. That is a very, very bad situation, I think, potentially for Seattle, because I think Sean McVay would have a field day over there with Jackson Dart in LA. So, Dan, with that being said, what's going on Seahawks Forever?
Stuff. I don't know. I guess we'll talk about the draft probably over the next few weeks. I mean, that's kind of the focus now. Just digging in to more minutia. You know, I did my prospect rankings. Those are all up on the channel now over at Seahawks Forever, where I broke down a top 5 in every single position group that I liked, that I thought would be there for the Seahawks to take at any given point in the draft, and also that I thought exhibit Seahawks characteristics and would fit scheme-wise and character-wise. And so you can check that out if you want. Now that that's done, now I start getting into a little bit more individual stuff, focusing on certain players and prospects, and just continuing to bring in some other draft experts and get their thoughts on the class as well.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I'll definitely be tuning into those. And guys, over here, we're doing our positional breakdowns, our kind of top 5. So we're going to have 2 shows coming out this week, one on our edges and interior O-line, and then offensive tackle and interior D-line. Those are going to be out from me and Ryan. We've done those. And then potentially next week, we'll be having Emery Hunt on, potentially coming onto the show. So look for that show as well. You can catch me on Saturday over at the Seahawkers German podcast. I'll be over there with Jonas and that crew to kind of do some breakdown on the draft. But yeah, other than that, thank you everybody that tuned in for tonight's show. Make sure you guys go down, click the subscribe button, notify yourself with notifications. Go check out Dan's show, Seahawks Forever. And one other thing that me and Dan are going to announce, or at least I will announce it for us, our other show, Pulse of the Draft, is going to be taking a hiatus for the rest of this offseason. Dan is really busy. I'm really busy with coaching, and it's just really hard for us to create our content here on our Seahawk-driven shows, as well as do the Pulse of the Draft and find the time for it. So it's not gone. It's just taking a hiatus for this offseason. Next year, we'll get it back going. We'll figure out our schedules. It'll be a little bit easier to get it to go. So we appreciate everyone that's gone over there and subscribed to it. But yeah, it's taking a bit of a hiatus.
Yeah, we're putting it in mothballs.
Yeah, exactly. We're just putting it in the closet. We're going to store it for a bit. It will come back out. But yeah, other than that, everybody, have a good night and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.